council meeting to order for Monday, February 27th, 2023. It's now 6:35 p.m. All members of the council are present. Others include James Johnson, clerk treasurer, and Laura Dogan, our city manager. The next item is to approve the minutes of February 6, 2023. And I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Vashon. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Wilson. Discussion on the minutes. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on, the next item is comments by members of the public. And the first we have is Ann Chirillo. It says acknowledgement and context.
Maybe I'll get up. So the first thing I realized was that tonight is really the last regular session of this city council. The next one is for questions and then there's a vote. And so I did want to acknowledge, Pam calculated that the mayor has done 26 years of work, which is an incredible amount of work for the city, and I do acknowledge that. The second acknowledgement I wanted to make was that this was the first year that we have ever discussed the water budget in with the regular budget, and we begin to see how they relate with each other, and that's an accomplishment, I feel. Even though the discussions got rocky at times. And the third thing I wanted to point out that's in the memos that I have presented to you as well is that the information that I relied on was based on two state statutes, one on water, one on sewer. And the language specifically in them is that the money that's in a fund, like the water or sewage fund, can only be used to pay the loans, the repairs, and the management of those operations. Based on what was said last time, I would say that what I have said in the memos and what I've said here was taken out of context. And then I realized, well, sometimes I don't even get in 2 minutes to tell you what the context is or get a chance to tell you. But the memo makes clear that the only amounts then, based on this statute, that should be paid of salary by those two funds are when they get labor, when they get that amount of labor for them, they should pay from the fund. Let me give you an example of that. Tom has people that work for public works. 4 of them work sometimes for water and sewage. Last year, we were given the figures by Laura, all 4 of them together worked $800 worth for water. I'm sorry, $800 worth for sewer. Sewer clearly paid the $800 for the work. But then sewer pays another third of their benefits. That amounts to somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 for all 4 of those people. It is not fair that sewer pays $20,800 for only $800 worth of work. That is the kind of thing I was referring to when I said that the statute was not being abided by, or the statute was violated, or that was not a lawful action. And specifically, the statute doesn't talk about who does this. So what's the violation is just money is being taken out of a fund that shouldn't be. It doesn't say that a person is doing anything wrong. It just says that that action is wrong. And that action is wrong for 4 employees It's not their fault. And the only rationale we were given for why this happens is that's the way it's always been. And all I was asking you to do, and all I was asking, or will be asking, but I'll give them at least 2 months grace, the next council to do, is to look at it more closely and see if the figures are correct. And that much money should be taken out of the funds. Mr. Wilson once said, with respect to one of these changes 10 years ago, that what it was going to do was raise the water and sewage rates. And that's what it does. And how far you want to go back and correct, I don't know. That's a judgment for you to think about. But it has been happening over a series of years. And the way to correct it, if you're asking me, is to, that one's easy because the numbers are already available. But for the others, a short period of time in which the sheets are kept of what people are doing will let you know if this is accurate or not.
Okay, I've given you 5 minutes.
Fine, thank you.
Okay. We have Jennifer Yearling, water sewer budget.
Thank you. So my question is this: when I go to the town website, the budget is posted with a message that it was unanimously approved by the city council. And then the different departments are like listed below it, and they're links so that you can go to that part of the budget. And at the bottom of it, one of those links is for water and sewer. So we all know that you guys did not unanimously approve the water and sewer budget. That's false. But the question is, have you, in your capacity of water commissioners, even reviewed it? And if yes, when did you review it? And I would like an answer tonight, because it's a simple question. So I would like to hear from the council. Did you review the water and sewer budget? And if so, when? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on.
So are you not going to answer?
We reviewed the budget with the city. This council reviewed the operational budget. As far as, excuse me, you're laughing in
I'm not
constant
laughing.
comments.
I'm really disturbed by
Well,
this.
you can be disturbed all you want. That's all I'm gonna say. You can be disturbed all you want. The council reviewed the budget to be voted on by the taxpayers. They vote on that budget. The water and sewer budget, I don't know how many times we've told you, is an enterprise fund. Council members review, I mean, I reviewed it, not here at this table, but it's an enterprise fund. It is, as Mr. Johnson, who probably can explain it once again even better than I can, you have your income and expense, and you have to raise the income to meet the expenses. And right now, that is how it is.
So
I'm not gonna go to a back and forth. I'm just saying that's how it is.
but the council, and you're also the water commissioners, correct?
The council's the water commissioners.
So don't you need to review the budget?
I can let other council members speak if they wish.
Well, I would say that, yes, we get our packets, I can't speak for everyone, we read them, we look them over, if we've got questions, we bring them. I would say that your most powerful piece to object to how the council is operated is to vote no on the budget. That's where your biggest voice is.
But we're not, according to Mayor Manette, voting on the water and sewer budget.
Yes, you are, because it's in there. I'm not sure if you're talking about
No,
the water
you're
and
no,
sewer.
you-
Not the water and sewer, but the allocations for everybody is in the budget, is in the city budget. I don't know, it's kind of beating a dead horse at this point. You're gonna have a new council. Those of you that object to us will, at least for me, I'll be gone, and the mayor's gonna be gone. You can take up your issues with the new council.
That doesn't really help us in terms of what's being put in front of the
And as-
taxpayers. And what,
Well,
I'm done.
moving on. Unless other council members wish to make any comments on that. Nope, okay.
So can I just ask for a point of clarification? So what I'm hearing with these kind of,
I said we're done.
but I just am confirming.
No, we're done. We're
Is
done.
that a no? Is that the council as a?
We reviewed the general fund budget that is being presented to the voters.
But not the
budget
water
that
and
is
sewer.
voted on town meeting day. That is the operational budget. Water and sewer is an enterprise fund.
So you did not review it as a council?
Not at this table.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
I can
hear.
tell you it hasn't been reviewed in 26 years that I've been here.
At the table?
At the table. It has not been reviewed. Mr. Johnson was on the council long before me.
Mr. Mayor, just because things have always
No,
been done
excuse
that
me.
way doesn't
Let
mean
me,
it's right.
don't keep interrupting me. We're done, okay? You've got me for one more week. So you can take it up with the new council. This is getting old mighty quick. I wonder why.
Mr. Mayor, your integrity should last that same week.
Mr. King, I didn't call on you. Moving on. The next item is the Grandstand Association update, and we have the Grandstand Chair, President Roger Carty. He's joining us remotely from warm, sunny Florida. Can you hear us, Roger?
I certainly can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paul, Mr. Mayor, for allowing us to appear tonight. Technology, great, from down here in Florida. I just was outside watching the SpaceX capsule go up and drop 21 satellites in orbit, and now back talking to you back in Newport. So this is great, and really appreciate the opportunity to speak to the council and renew the commitment that we made over a year ago to work with the city and the city administration in renovating the grandstand. And you're all well aware that the funding has been approved, and we're now waiting for paperwork to come from Montpelier. We would be remiss if we didn't thank Mr. Welch and the city for allowing us in the application, and Peter Welch for accepting our application and picking that as one of the 15 that they would be willing to fund. So we're now waiting for the paperwork to come through, and we started this over a year ago. We want to continue working on this with the city, and we do need a commitment from the city to allow us to work on the paperwork for the earmark and continue the project. So at some time, I hopefully the city will give us that support. We will, our committee has met in the last couple of weeks, and what we worked on at that meeting was further projects. We'll be raising money to cover any unexpected expenses that might come up that might not be covered by the earmark. Also, this money would help cover anything that would come above and beyond the $500,000, which would include the maintenance of the building. So we're looking at trying to keep this from costing the city any money, and that was one of our commitments a long time ago, that when we started this, we would do this project without any financial burden to the city. And so hopefully we're heading in that direction. We've done a pretty good job so far. I think we've completed all the paperwork and paid for any of the paperwork that we've had to come up with money for. So I think we're in a good spot right now. We really need right now a vote by the council to support us continuing to do the paperwork on the earmark grant and move forward to the next step after that. So, once if the city council is willing to do that, our next step, and Mr. Mayor, I would ask you to speak to that. You have been working on all of the paperwork necessary to identify the grandstand as an historic site with the state of Vermont, and you've prepared all the paperwork, and that paperwork is sitting ready and waiting for the council to again approve us submitting that on their behalf. So I would thank you for all the work that you have done with us and allowing us to proceed to the point we're at now. And we're looking forward to receiving the paperwork for the grant and getting started on that. So, thank you.
Okay. Regarding the historic designation, what we've been working on is it's from the Division of Historic Preservation from the state of Vermont. It's an actual form that you fill out and you provide supporting documents for it. This would be a state designation for the grandstand. And in reality, it would most likely open up the ability to raise additional funds. The Division of Historic Preservation has grant opportunities opening up once again in August of this year. They will grant up to $20,000 with a $20,000 match, so it's a 50-50. The committee, we met and we were looking at ways of raising the additional funds so that the city would not have to come up with the match. But it opens up another potentially $20,000 from preservation, and if we raise another $20,000, we've been very successful in our fundraising so far. It's been, in a way, I think more successful than I thought it would be at first, and it just seemed to snowball and grow. And so we would continue to raise matching funds for the structure. This is a form that gets submitted to the state. There are various buildings throughout the state that have state designations of historic significance, and as we all know, this is one of only one or two original wooden grandstands left in the state, and too often we see pieces of history being destroyed, and it's a way of helping to preserve it for the future. And it's had a lot more uses than just baseball. It could be, as our committee has discussed, many future uses for that facility. And there's a lot of interesting articles I uncovered from the Old Express and Standard and the Newport Daily regarding the grandstand. It was very interesting. I couldn't quite tie any major league ball players to it, unfortunately, but that's not as critical. But I even was able to get a picture of the 1963 Newport High School football team raising goalposts in front of the grandstand because that was their home field for football. And we had Sacred Heart and those schools, Sacred Heart, Newport High School, they played soccer there. That was all their home field. Until, for Newport High School, it was the home field until the high school here was built.
Right.
And so that is what we're looking, is to be able to submit this to the Historic Preservation. It goes through a review committee. Now, I know from looking at their website, they're not scheduled to meet again, I think, until April or May. They just had a meeting in January. And that's a committee of, I think, 5 people who would review this. And it's just been, for me, it's been interesting just to research newspapers. I mean, that's the most interesting aspect that I have found in taking on this project. And the park and the grandstand were all basically projects putting people back to work during the Great Depression and the war years. And so that's where I think it's very significant for the community also. And I know this one article it was a blurb that came out of the Burlington Free Press, and it said, Newport's Garden Park takes on a new phase of usefulness to the city in the announcement that there will be constructed at once a grandstand and field house thereon. Thus gradually the park is becoming a play and sports center. When the shrubbery leaves and the blooms this spring and grass areas become green, there will be a new beauty to the park, once a breeder of mosquitoes and an eyesore to thousands of car occupants, many of them strangers. And this article ended by saying this park is destined to become one of Newport City's greatest assets. And I think over the years it really has become an asset, with everything from the playground to the proposed splash pad to the ball fields to the many activities that have been held over the years, and the history of many residents who have played over there or growing up and various things like that. And so that's what we're asking also, is for allow to submit this to the state of Vermont.
Paul, if I could add to that, in all the research that I've done on the grandstand, I found that that is the only all-wood grandstand remaining from the original 4 constructed in 1939. There are several others that are a couple of them in existence, but they have been renovated with steel and with cement to keep them together. And this is the only one that's all wood that's remaining in the state, so that's pretty significant.
Questions or comments from Council
Now,
Chairman?
you mentioned if it's designated as a historical landmark, then they match funds that are raised for maintaining it?
Well, basically, it opens up more grant opportunities from my research. And what we're trying to do, even though we had the designated earmark from, at the time, Congressman Welch, now Senator Welch's office, we are looking at ways of raising additional funds, because the goal is to, also the ball field in the front of it, to bring it up to complete standards and work on that. And we're trying to do all this at no cost to the city. And that's what our goal is, to try to, but we also would like to have it in such a way that if we raise enough funds for long-term maintenance, hopefully creating a sinking fund, for long-term maintenance.
What would the city's responsibilities be if it became a historical landmark?
It doesn't overall change, this doesn't add any additional responsibility to the city. The city has to maintain once we fix it, the city, we hope, would maintain the structure.
Right.
And that's pretty much, it's an opportunity, what I find, for grant opportunities, because there's historical grants throughout and if we looked at it, that if we could apply for historical grant money to help go towards that renovation, the earmark funds, there would be funds left potentially, because construction costs, who knows when things come in, that could go to the ball field. That's what our thought process is.
And the city still maintains ownership?
Yes, no, we're not, there's no ownership change. And once it's restored, your actual annual maintenance shouldn't be a whole lot, because it would be completely restored. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, so are there two things here? You're looking for the historical preservation and also for the council to accept the $500,000 earmark?
Basically, to have a vote to formally accept, because if the council now decided not to go, not to accept it, we'd have to let them know that the council had changed their mind and decided not to accept the earmark. And I know the portal has not opened up. I looked at last year's, and I think it was like 40 pages, the documents, the guide, and that's not there yet for this year.
Is the $500,000 going to the association or the city?
City, it's the city.
It's a city asset.
It's a city asset, and it was the council let us submit the application on the city's behalf. But we're trying to help save a lot of extra work for Laura and everybody by doing all the groundwork and all the paperwork on behalf. And we brought everything here. We brought the earmark request, and we did all that work. And
Done a lot of foot work and put a lot of hours in. I understand that.
Yeah.
I am a little confused with the maintenance, because the city will be doing the maintenance, but you'll be planning for the costs?
well, what we're looking at is potentially, if this fund's left, we could always turn it over to the city and a sinking fund to be set up. That's one way.
Once it's complete, I don't think the maintenance is gonna be that much. If you put $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 in the seating fund every year, it may need some paint 5 years down the road. But everything should last, and we're not gonna leave, I don't think the plan is to leave the ends wide open so the weather gets in there either.
Right.
We'll have something to keep the weather out when it's not in use, but, you keep it painted, It's wood, to keep it painted, you're all set.
And part of the restoration, as far as the roof goes, would be, metal roofs are guaranteed for 50 years, because the city switched to using metal. Let's see, Laura, we got it at the Gateway, we use it at, Prouty Beach, that building. We've been putting, because they're, what?
The fire department.
The fire department, that's another one and they're guaranteed 50 years at least. I know the one on my house, my own personal one, was when we did it, it was a big upfront cost, but it was 50-year guarantee.
I don't think there should be just that much worry about future maintenance, because when it's done, basically it'll be old, new, old. If they get everything painted and everything's done the way we plan, the maintenance should be minimal.
If it's
The reason it's in
designated,
the shape is because nothing's been done to that since the 60s. Well, 2004. Doug can answer that better than I can. They did a little bit of paint and some repairs to it, but it hasn't been touched since. It's just been sitting there.
could the cost potentially go up because it's designated as this and has to be rebuilt in a certain way, or do you know that?
Not that I know of.
No, because we have to maintain the structure itself. The only thing that's going to change, once it's through the restoration process, will make it fully ADA compliant. And by that involved building a ramp in the front
No, yeah.
to come up.
Only space for it.
And then they would
May have to take the first row of seats out.
take the first row. But because we wanted to make it fully ADA compliant.
And just as a reminder, full structural analysis was done on the building.
Right, and that's how we presented the budget to Congressman Welch at the time, based upon their numbers of the full structural analysis and cost estimate.
What was the cost estimate?
It was right around the 500,000,
535.
535.
I'm just wondering if the grant comes to the city and, we'll essentially sign it off to the contractors or whatever the bill is. What if it comes in substantially more than 500,000?
It has to go to bid, has to be a competitive bid, and at that time you would know. I can use an example of a project that had, I don't forget how many sources of funding, Laura would know too, the Yellow Barn project down in Greensboro. Hardwick, I'm sorry. That came in substantially higher and they had to go back to the drawing board.
I think they had to rebudget.
They had to rebudget and redo it, if I remember
Yeah,
right.
they had
So
to increase it.
until we actually go out to bid, it's hard to know. These were estimates that the structural folks came up with, and then they added a percent to them. I forget what percent, do you remember, Jim?
I think it was 35, 40.
They added 35% to the cost, I believe, because of the materials, what they estimated at the time, the materials. And so they were taking account of all that construction costs, but who knows? Costs could be coming down again. Costs could stay the same, they could be going up, who knows? I know some things have stabilized, but it's just hard to tell until you actually go out to bid. But until the portal opens up, to know exactly what you go through and everything, it's kind of hard to tell on that also. But what we were once again looking for is for the city to basically say, yes, we would like to accept the earmark and do the process. Because you could basically say now, no, we don't want it, and we'd have to let them know.
So the cost of the feasibility study was more than the association had wanted, but has anybody reached out to, for usage in the future, or have you guys reached out to the rec department?
Or,
Just to see who's interested in using that area.
well, our plan is to redevelop that ball field, to turn it into not just baseball, but softball, so it'd be a dual use. All right? There's plenty of space down there for concerts and fairs and anything you want down there. I mean, it would be, once it's done, it's there for the rec department to use. It's city property, do any event they want down there.
I'm just wondering if promoting that area now with the rec department could help draw more people in or something like that.
Well, you can't really play ball down there, because you wouldn't even know the ball field exists now.
Right, I mean, for the future, they could start trying to promote, because Mike's been amazing recruiting people to Newport.
Well, I would think that would be, I mean, we can come up with some ideas, what we could think could be used down there, but I think that would be the rec department's job to promote the area.
Right, I was wondering if you
That's
had,
not what we're about restoring a historical site.
right, I was wondering if you already reached out to Mike or not.
Well, we reached out to the rec committee at one time, and they weren't interested at that time, so I don't know what their feeling is now.
May I? I'm just wondering if the $500,000 would include the ability to generate a feasibility study. There are grants available from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. I think that it might be a good roadmap for the city so that there's known costs and use and a plan. We've done very well with planning grants before, and it's been very helpful. So that's one thing that I wanted to make sure that the council knew was available. It'd be a grant for planning through the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. The other thing that I want to point out is a grant for $500,000 could result in a single audit. So I want to make sure that that's planned for in any type of administrative expense. So a single audit might be what you might know, somewhere around $5,000 or $7,000. So that would have to be included in the administrative aspect of whoever is going to be responsible for administering the funds.
So was it, feasibility was done for the splash pad, and for the 400 some odd, whatever $1,000 could trigger a single audit for that too. So it's not unusual, it's just part of doing business.
We haven't done one. We
A
haven't
feasibility
had
on the splash pad?
No, a
Oh.
single audit. The feasibility study on the splash pad was done in 2014 and 2015.
Okay.
There was a planning grant for the entire Gardner Park.
So what's the threshold to trigger a single audit?
I think it's 500,000.
No, it's like, I think it's 750 now.
Something we want to keep in mind.
And audits are
But-
not anything to be afraid of. I mean,
You just have to
audits are
pay for
audits.
them. You just have to pay for them.
I don't,
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead, Roger, I'll jump in.
I was just, over the year plus that we've been working on this, just to answer a little bit the question, if we talked to anybody about activities at the park, and I would say many of the people that we talked to didn't even think we'd have a chance of being at this point in the game, where we would have the money to renovate the grandstand and so on. I've put in numerous articles over the last year plus, talking about all the different activities that could be held at Gardner Park. Plus, we also have in our brochure, our portfolio of what we've been working on, a sheet with a list of activities that could be held down there. But I think a lot of people are waiting to see, is there going to be a grandstand there? And I have said many times that the things that can be held down at Gardner Park are only limited by your imagination. There are so many things that can be done down there that involve the young and the old, male, female, mixed groups, activities, that just, we get to the point where they say, oh yeah, we're going to have a grandstand there. I think these people are going to come forward and say, we want to put something together to have over there. I know the four-wheelers, when we worked a fundraiser with them, they said, when you're ready to go, we'd be more than happy to put an activity over at Gardner Park for you. So there are people out there, we've talked to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who have supported us and said, we got activities going over there, we'll be part of it. So we think there's a strong possibility of having a lot of activities over there. And what we want to do is we want to revitalize the economic, the recreational activity at Gardner Park. And I think that by converting that into a baseball and softball complex, the state tournaments that come there are going to only increase in number, and the number of activities you could have over there for softball and baseball would also increase. So, and that's only going to be if people are willing to do the work and put it together and organize it. So,
I think the feasibility part of this is it's the same feasibility the rest of Gardner Park has currently. It's just restoring a historic building in Gardner Park. It's still the same ball, you play ball fields, be softball there and baseball. What we've been doing in the park now. It's just that we're trying to restore a historic building. I mean, it was never meant to be a revenue thing for the city. I mean, you can't, it's only usable 4, 5, 6 months a year at that, so you can't, you know, it's an expense. But when I look back at all the money the city saved by neglecting that building for the last 40 years or more, you know, putting a few $1,000s in it every year for maintenance after it's done is,
And it's a park,
No,
it's not a revenue generating facility. I mean, I don't think ice skating
Correct.
generates
Never
revenue,
thought
I
it
don't
would
think
be.
playing hockey does, I don't think, you know, and any of those things, they're all good activities and it's all quality of life. It's not like trying to start a revenue generating business, so it's,
I think it's, the usefulness of the grandstand is gonna be the same as it, like, comes up these ideas for Gardner Park like you're doing for Gardner Park now. It's the same thing, it just includes the grandstand. I mean,
A feasibility study would provide a roadmap, and it would be a way to capture all the information that Roger just spoke about.
But a feasibility study's already been done for the park. You did that in your studies in 2014-15. To me, this is just adding a roadblock, another bottleneck roadblock. That's basically a waste of money. We're looking to restore a historical structure that's part of the history of the city of Newport, and I don't see where a feasibility study is going to help in any way that aspect of that building.
It's not intended as a roadblock, Mr. Mayor. What I'm trying to do is give the community an idea of what the future expenses are. It also gives you-
I'm gonna say, the future expenses of that building are gonna be a hell of a lot less than the future expenses of a splash pad. That I do know. I've done a little homework. By the time you pay for the maintenance of a splash pad, by the time you pay for the maintenance of the equipment, by the time you pay for the chlorine, by the time you pay for the water usage, and you're gonna only get the splash pad from May, if it's warm enough in May to September. Maintenance on a building, that building's gonna be a heck of a lot less. I see this as a roadblock. I don't know. That's what I see it as, and I know we've
not
had
intended to
differences
be.
of opinion,
It's not.
very differences of opinion on this whole project, and
I want to go on the record and say this is not intended as a roadblock. It's intended as a responsible move so the community knows exactly what to expect. That's my job, and I said it.
well, maybe if you lived and paid taxes and knew history of Newport, you'd be more appreciative.
I think it gives me a very objective
I'd like to
place.
say one other thing. I think the feasibility of this thing, like I said, is what the Garden Park feasibility is currently. When this gets done, we turn to Michael and say, here's your grandstand. Do what you want, have some events over there, do what you want with it. We're not gonna sit there and dictate what can be used, that grandstand can be used for. We know what it can be used for.
That's my interest. I don't wanna see it fall into disrepair again and fall into that cycle. So I'm just curious if those conversations have been happening. It sounds like some of them have
and
started.
if the city maintains it, it won't fall into disrepair as it did originally. I mean, it's just,
That's why that's why it's in the condition it is now, Chris, because the city never put money in, didn't put any money into that thing for 35, 40, 50 years. They just let it sit there and go to, you know.
But it's just like the city dock. The city had to put money into the dock. That was falling apart many years ago when I first got on the council. They had all that revenue coming in, but they weren't putting money back into the facility. Finally, it took a group of the boaters to come and finally say, hey, we're paying all this money. Can we have some maintenance? Or like at Prouty Beach with the campers. It took them to finally raise a stink. You know, Kevin was well aware, you know, you brought that up here. It took the campers to, you know, finally come and, but we've been doing cost estimates and things like that. I just don't see a feasibility study that could take a whole nother year by the time you do everything.
Yeah.
It's not hard to come up with, I don't think it'd be hard to come up with what it would be for annual maintenance on a structure.
I don't think it would be that much. Particularly if you, once we get it done, and it'll probably go 6, 7, 8 years before anything needs to be done. If you put only $2,000 into a fund each year, and you got $16,000 to repair something's wrong after 8, 9 years. To my way of thinking, the city's in this recreation mode now. To have that grandstand repaired and sitting in the middle of the city, in a park like Gardner Park, is just a big asset to the city as far as I can see.
Okay.
Anyway, that's what I.
Can I bring up a point? I was involved with Babe Ruth. We had 2 regional New England tournaments up here, 2002, 2004. The community generated with each tournament, and this is on Babe Ruth's affiliations when the town is picked, between $300,000 and $350,000 of revenue for the community. Didn't go to anyone but the community. Babe Ruth put it on. And we did it as fundraisers. We did it in 2002, 2004. So that's generously $600,000 of revenue within 2 years that the city did gain. We spent, I think, when I was involved with Babe Ruth for 8 years, we probably put in $900 of material to maintain the building, fix it up for the tournaments. And every year for the city, this is when Brian Eldridge was working down there, Babe Ruth gave him $900 for every 2 years to fill the infield. Okay, and we did that on fundraising, and that was just the organization of baseball. I've been in contact with 2 semi-pro teams. One is in Missisquoi that wants a home field, okay? And it's not that past league that tried to get in here, that pro league. I don't remember who they were. But this is semi-pro. These are kids in high school. They're high school that are going to college students coming off of summer. And it's a semi-pro league. I play semi-pro, Rogers played semi-pro. Basically, they play for the love of it. They make no money. They call it semi-pro, but there's no money involved. They want a home field. I've been in touch with Babe Ruth, the president of Babe Ruth. He would love to have a tournament up here. I know the program in Babe Ruth is probably 1 team, 2 teams. I don't know what it is. It's fallen down since I was involved with it. But I said, can we still have a tournament up here? Can we have a New England tournament up here, even though we don't have a team? And he says, if you put together a host team, now we've got 1 Babe Ruth team, we'd love to come to Vermont. The last time they were in Vermont was in 2014. That was in Colchester. They haven't been here since we had it. And we had it two times within 2 years. So it's a benefit. And like we said, softball is big. And we're planning on making that a multi-use field for softball and baseball. That place will be filled. If anyone goes down there in the summertime, that place is packed with people, families playing ball. You know, if there's no organized game going down, the families, they'll pick up a baseball. They'll go into the field or the outfield and have a game, wiffle ball, whatever. That place is used, and it generates money. Anyone who comes here, softball, okay, what is that going to generate? You got teams who'd love to come here and play. And we had families from Connecticut, Rhode Island, 2 teams from Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire. They fell in love with the grandstand. They've never seen anything like that.
So, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, because we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah, I'd just like to, from my point, wrap it up and let everybody know that over a year ago when we wrote our charter so that when if we save the grandstand and that is renovated, this committee was not going to go away. This committee was going to still be there, still functioning, helping raise money to support activities at Gardner Park. So we're prepared to go beyond just getting the grandstand renovated. We're prepared to stick around and help do fundraisers and projects and help get activities going at the park. We want to revitalize the economic activities over there. And so our charter says that we will continue on after the grandstand is renovated and things are put in place, you know, to revitalize activities over there. So we hope to be around for a long time.
That reminded me of my other question, and maybe I just contact you guys directly, but have you considered maybe working with the North Country Career Center to either plan on future maintenance with high schoolers there, or maybe offset some costs while projects are going on?
No,
Good idea, though.
it's a good idea. It's a good idea, but once
I
again.
can add to that.
Oh.
I can add to that. I talked to the building trades program here a couple of years ago, and we were talking about this. And as you know, they put that building up. They constructed that building over in the corner of Gardner Park, and they're open to any activities that they can work on. So certainly, that is a program at the Career Center that you could approach to say, are you willing to do some work here as a project for your school and the students?
Most of you are familiar with the, I'm Scott Boskin, former high school and junior high board member. Up until a year ago, I was on the board for 9 years. During the time when the junior high had a grassroots committee that raised a couple $100,000 to put in a baseball and softball field, and also to restore the 2 biggest soccer fields out of the 6 soccer fields that are on the junior high athletic complex. And as a result of that, a field that only had soccer now has baseball and softball with 4 dugouts, 2 on each of the fields, visitor and home. And those dugouts were constructed by natural resources class and buildings trades classes at the Career Center. So that's a possibility of having building trades and natural resources be involved, and I would be happy to talk to the teacher and the director of the Career Center in the future to help. And Laura's husband is also currently on the board, so he probably could be involved to help us with that as well.
So I was just going to say that I think we're getting a little bit off topic because we're just talking at this point about accepting the earmark and going to allowing the committee to submit the application for the Vermont Preservation Trust. There's just, I need to clarify one thing. If anybody who's looking at the memo, if anybody knows where I live, you'll see that it's my address on there, which I share with my husband. And I just want to, just that, it just hasn't been updated. My husband's been off the committee for quite some time now. He took a job, he's changed jobs with the state, and he's commuting to Montpelier again, so he's gone, 14 hours a day. So he just didn't have the time to be able to commit as much as he needed to. So that says Sias Avenue, but it needs to change, and my husband has not been on the committee for quite some time, for a bunch of months. Not because he doesn't believe in the committee, but because he's not home. Because it's pretty straightforward.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Never changed it.
Well, I just don't want conflict of interest to come up again, which really doesn't exist since it's a city asset. So.
Right. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, sorry. Since it's going through the state level historical in April, would it just be prudent to pass it through our historical society, just as a...
They don't give any money.
What's that?
They don't give any money.
No, just so they know what the plan is.
Oh.
Our planning commission / historical preservation committee.
I mean, I can give a copy to them.
Do we want to table that until they see it, or do we want to?
And what
You
impact would they
the
have?
Historic committee decide whether you're gonna accept that 500,000?
No, just
it's
the
two
second
separate
part.
things.
Second part.
The second part.
Oh.
I mean, if it's just informational, I mean, it's not like they can, what do they do? I mean, what's their influence? What would their impact be?
They just go through the historical properties of Newport and see where things can go. And it wouldn't stop anything. I'm just wondering, since that review's not happening until April.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I would just say, hey, here's what we're doing.
Because it's a council decision.
Yeah.
It's not there, it's a council decision.
would move to approve and accept the federal earmark funds in the amount of $500,000 to be used solely for the renovation of Newport's historic Gardner Park grandstand and ball field, in cooperation with the grandstand committee and surplus funds, if any, to be used to help with maintenance of the grandstand.
Motion was made, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Wilson, made by Ms. Pedersen, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it.
We need a second motion for submitting the application to the historic, it's the Vermont Historic Preservation, right?
Right.
I'll move to authorize the submission of the Vermont Historic Preservation application.
Motion made, is there a second?
I'll second.
Made by Ms. Pedersen, second by Mr. Charbonneau, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries.
Paul, I have a question. I couldn't quite hear the first motion clearly enough. Did that include giving us approval to do the paperwork once the earmark grant paperwork is released?
Well, it's gonna be it has to be a cooperative effort because we can do the paperwork, but it is gonna involve work of the city.
No, I agree with that.
You know, so,
Yeah.
but as far as the paperwork, we would, you know, like we've done in the past, we would do the legwork. And I mean, as far as administrating the earmark, another thing we can always do, because it's already being done. The city contracts with NCIC to oversee grants. Well, I mean, if this became too much of a administrative burden, I'm trying to get the terminology out of Meadow Block, burden, the committee I would assume we could look into NCIC and see what their costs would be.
But
You know,
wouldn't that be a road? Wouldn't that be a road to cross once we get there? But
Well, but it's a road to cross. It's just something to think about, yes, down the road. But you got to remember, the portal hasn't even opened up. They don't know when it's opening up.
No, but I think what we need.
Well, the motion's already been done, Roger. The motion's been done. We're all set.
I just didn't know if that was included because we talked about our committee having permission to work with the city and the administration to do the paperwork if necessary.
The motion's been made and
It's been voted on,
Yeah, that's been approved, yeah.
and the other one was approved.
Yeah.
So both motions have been approved, Roger.
Oh, no, I'm not asking to change the motion.
Well, we're
I'm
all
just-
set, Roger. We're all set.
I think he just wants to make sure that it's okay with the council if the committee does the paperwork.
Right.
That's what he's
Is
getting.
that,
no,
I think that's
Well,
the expectation.
you know, his memorandum said that.
Yeah.
Wanted us to allow us to officially proceed with the
No, I mean,
earmark
if you-
paperwork
if you guys
on
don't
behalf
settle
of the city, so
okay,
I'll set with
I guess I'm
yours.
getting confused myself now.
it should be done.
It should be all set, Roger.
Okay.
Okay. We'll move on. Mr. Johnson, new business.
Yeah, I do. I've got a, vendor's application from Smokin' Joe's Barbecue. They were at the park last summer.
Oh,
It's just a renewal. He's got the payment, he's got the insurance, he's got the pictures, he's got the whole works. He wants it for a year. He's buying a year's worth. So I got a check for $300 here, just a renewal of what he had last year, basically.
so we need a motion to approve it.
I take that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Charbonneau. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Wilson to approve the vendor's permit for Smokin' Joe's. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries.
When is he gonna be there? When does he go out of the park?
He's paying his It's cheaper to pay it for a year than it is 3 months at a
He
time.
probably, I think he goes for the farmer's market.
And farmer's market.
Mike knows more about that later.
Yeah, he's there for the farmer's market for sure.
Okay, I've also got some liquor department applications need to be approved. Of course, you know, they don't send the application here, it goes to liquor, they tell me who's applying. Send this little.
So we don't have to sign
bidding.
it? We don't
Yeah,
sign
you still
it?
have to approve it, you don't have to sign anything, they just need approval. So I've got 3 for RL Valley, one's a second-class license to sell beer and wine. One's a tobacco license, and one's a tobacco substitute. I guess everybody's getting into substitute.
The vaping stuff.
The vaping stuff. And so I've got 3 there, and I've got 2 for Newport Village Market, used to be Vista.
Okay.
One's a second-class liquor license, and one's a tobacco license. So I just need to know if you approve these
There's no issues.
5 licenses. There's no issue, they're all repeats.
They're all repeats. There's no issues.
Never had an issue with these.
So we would have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Charbonneau. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Pedersen. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Then the motion carries. Any other new business?
No, just want everybody to remember town meeting next, this Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Mr.
So
Charbonneau?
everybody
any new
comes and does
business?
their thing.
No, sir.
Mr. Wilson?
No.
I don't have any new business? And
Just Winterfest was great fun, a lot of people getting together, so well done again.
any new business?
Just the annual report is on our website, and the hard copies should be available tomorrow, so we'll pick them up and have them here for distribution.
Okay. Moving on, old business, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Charbonneau.
No.
Mr. Wilson.
No.
I don't have any. Ms. Bennett. Any? Okay. Okay, the next regularly scheduled city council meeting and public informational hearing will be Monday, March 6th, 6:30 PM here in the council room. And then there is a small annual meeting on March 7th at 8 PM. That's Tuesday after the voting. And with that, we need an executive session to discuss the evaluation of a public officer or employee, 1 VSA 313 3A3. Need a motion.
So moved.
Motion made, is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it, motion carried. We're going in executive session.